whose company operates the vessel. The AP news agency reports the ship was hit by a bomb-carrying drone off the coast of Oman. We're told the crew is safe and the ship avoided major damage. No one's claimed responsibility, but suspicion immediately fell on Iran. It's been blamed for a number of drone attacks on Israeli-associated ships over several years. Jonathan Savage, Fox News.
We're just getting this update from the U.S. Capitol. The House Financial Services Committee is going to hold a hearing in December to investigate FTX, the cryptocurrency company that has collapsed into bankruptcy. Republicans want answers because the FTX CEO had given a lot of money to Democrats in donations ahead of the elections. While many Americans slept, NASA launched.
Liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
That was just after 1 a.m. at the Kennedy Space Center. On top of that rocket is a new space capsule that's being tested on this 42-day mission with crash test dummies inside, collecting data for future missions they hope will land astronauts on the moon again. I'm Dave Anthony. This is Fox News.
WPTV's First Alert Weather on WSTU is brought to you by Sailfish Roofing, 772-263-ROOF. Community roofing company you can trust. Sailfish Roofing. Now here's WPTV's First Alert meteorologist.
Your WPTV First Alert forecast. Plenty of sunshine throughout the afternoon with increasing clouds later in the day. Afternoon highs today near records, highs topping out in the upper 80s. It'll be hot and humid this afternoon. A cold front moves in overnight, and that could bring us some late-day showers. For tomorrow morning, temperatures running in the mid-60s. Afternoon highs tomorrow down to the upper 70s, and that humidity going down as well. It'll be a bit cloudy at times tomorrow. More sunshine, though, Friday. Pleasant weather through the weekend with highs in the upper 70s to low 80s. I'm WPTV First Alert meteorologist Katya Hall for WSTU 1450, Martin County's Heritage Station.
You are listening to WSTU, Stewart, Jensen Beach, Hope Sound, Martin County's Heritage Station.
It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Well, good morning. We're back on air after a little visit from Nicole last week that set us back. But the guests that were going to be on last week, which is going to be the Stewart Women's Club, and I have another guest, and it's escaping my mind, but both of those shows will be on next Thursday. So be sure to tune back in. We certainly won't miss them. Today, we're going to have a lot of updates. We're winding down towards the end of the year, and there's been so much that's happened in Martin County over the past year, and I'm very pleased to have in the studio with me Mike Circus. Mike is a repeat guest, but Mike is somebody that really has followed and gotten involved with the local politics, following county, schools, city issues, you name it. And I invited Mike back because I kind of wanted to do a roundup of the year, all the hot topics that are going on, right, Mike?
There's a lot going on.
There truly is, and there's been a lot of interesting things that's happened this year. So we're going to be covering that here in just a minute. But before we do, everybody, I said it all season, and my goodness, we needed a hurricane storage last week, and that's Indiantown Marina. I hope you got your boat out there because those folks really know how to take care of your boat, keep it safe. It's really one of the safest places and best boat storage facilities in South Florida. It's located inland on the Okeechobee Waterway, and they're of course, a very well-protected hurricane hull, but not only that, it's a do-it-yourself and full-service boat yard. Any kind of work you need done, prop, shaft, prop and shaft work, bottom painting, everything that you could possibly need. Do it yourself, or they'll have a mechanic out there to help you. You can give them a call at 772-631-3272. Again, that's 631-3272, and that's the good folks at Indiantown Marina. And don't forget about the Best Kept Secret in Martin County. You can come by boat or stroll the boardwalk to explore what the Best Kept Secret has to offer. The boardwalk features local artists, an Airbnb, art gallery, boat charters, marina, craft and creamery, craft beers, wine, and 24 flavors of ice cream, so you certainly have something for everybody in the family. Bike rentals, paddleboard rentals, you name it. And all that is down in the pocket in Port Salerno at the Fish House Art Center. You can visit them online to see what they have before you head out, thefishhouseartcenter.com, or give them a call, 221-5482. And finally, COVID, unexpected expenses and illnesses. There are many issues that can cause your successful business to slump deep into the red. We are there to help, and we only get paid if we provide you a workout. Debt restructuring is complicated. We are the negotiator between you and your creditors. Commercial Mortgage has been in the industry of small balance corporate finance since 2003. Their focus is on challenging corporate foreclosures, debt restructures, equity, and new debt solutions. These issues are often not easy to see or understand when you run a business and are faced with multifaceted debt challenges that include legal actions on various fronts. That's where Commercial Mortgage comes in. They never charge a front fee or deposit and are only paid if they successfully provide you a debt workout. Areas of expertise include hotels, marinas, office buildings, restaurants, apartments and multifamily, condos, golf courses, home builders, and land development, including new and repurposed developments. Call Commercial Mortgage today at 772-872-6099 or visit them online at commercialmortgagellc.com. Now, in the studio with me, I have Mike Circus. Mike is a near lifelong resident of Martin County, having moved into the county as a child and leaving only for college, followed by a brief stay in Orlando early in his culinary career. Mike returned to Martin County to be with his wife and build a family in a place he knew he could provide a great childhood for his kids. Today, Mike works as a carpenter and spends his free time active in the community as a volunteer with his children's school and youth group activities. He is a sitting board member of the Martin County Farm Bureau and former board member of the Martin County REC. His passion is traveling with his wife and children to discover and share memorable visitations to historical sites and museums around Florida and the U.S. And Mike, you've been following the Cape Canaveral here quite a bit here lately in the launches.
I tell you, it's an exciting day to be a resident here in Martin County. Obviously, the air show last weekend is a reminder of the aviation lineage we have here in the county, dating all the way back to really when Martin County was only about a decade old, when Witham Field was first developed as a naval aviation station, auxiliary air station, excuse me. And then following that, it was actually run by Northrop Grumman for nearly 3 decades as a manufacturing facility and test facility. You know, Martin County's really only had control of that airport as a general aviation facility going back to right about the time of Hurricane Andrew, 93, 94 area. So, I mean, we have a long history in aviation. A lot of people don't realize that we also have a history in the aerospace industries. There's 3 companies. The rocket that launched last night about 1:47 in the morning.
Were you up for that?
If you're a space nerd like me, you were up and you watched it, and it was absolutely incredible to watch. We're 120 miles away from the launch pad, and it was almost as if the Earth was tilted 90 degrees and you were watching a sunrise from the north instead of the east. It was
magnificent.
It was absolutely incredible. But just before sunrise this morning, right around 5 a.m. or so, Martin County, for the first time ever, left the Earth's orbit and is on its way to the moon. So,
oh my gosh, here we go.
We had 3 companies here in the county that provided materials that went directly into the launch system itself. One of them's actually been machining parts for the RS-10 engine for almost 30 years, taking rockets into low Earth and middle Earth orbit. But this morning they launched the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, launched the Orion capsule towards the moon. It slung around the moon itself. It's on its way to go around the moon and end up. Martin County's going to circle circle the sun until eventually the propulsion stage is sucked right into the sun itself. So
how cool is that?
It's really cool. It's the largest rocket ever built on Earth, 8.8 million thrust pounds. And like I said, it lit up the sky last night. It was like watching sunrise just before 2 a.m.
Did you happen to get some photos?
I got a couple. I'll send them to you. I got to give credit to my wife. She's the one that took the photos. And my 9-year-old and 7-year-old, they paired with it this morning. They got up, they watched the rocket, and
Did they
still got up
really?
for school.
Yeah, I was
so.
going to say, that's really good. I don't think I could get my daughter out of bed at that time.
It was amazing. It was
Let
well
alone
worth
me.
it.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. Before we get into some more things here in Martin County, I want to let everybody know, too, the Carnival of Lights is just about ready to kick off. It's going to be at the fairgrounds. Carnival of Lights is bigger than last year. It features a Castle Christmas, which is formerly in the Isleworth in Palm City. It's added exhibits of 150 nativity sets, Nutcracker collection, and huge ceramic Christmas village. And there's just going to be so much fun things that are happening out there. We have this Christmas tradition that they've started out there at Martin County Fairgrounds. And, folks, the admission's only $8 and 10 and under is free. So it runs 4 weekends beginning on Black Friday and 5:30 to 9 p.m. over the weekends.
I'm so glad you brought that up because the Castle family, driving by their home is something my family and I have done for several years now. And they put, just an incredible amount of effort into putting that display on at their home, and it's become so popular that it's just not feasible to do at the house anymore.
Right.
And what the Castle family was able to do, and I'm sure Jay over at the fairgrounds is going to slap me for saying this, but the Castle family, they're not taking a single penny from it. They're volunteering their time 100%, and their kickback per se for that is that on Thursdays before the weekend of the lights themselves, or the weekend festivities themselves, on Thursdays you can go and see the light displays up and active for free.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Now, that would be the only aspect that's open during the
just
the
their
Festival
area.
of Lights. Yeah, it'll be the Castle Lights themselves will be up and free. But so all the other activities, you'll have to come back and put the $8 towards the fairgrounds, which by all means is a great organization to
100%.
support. So go on Thursday for free and then go back on Friday so your teaser
See
gets you ready
everything.
for the weekend.
That's right. And what a generous spirit for them to go and share their love of Christmas and all the decorations that they have with the general
fantastic.
public. So
Absolutely. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I wish I had the date on me, but they're actually going to be on ABC's Christmas Lights Rivalry. I don't know the name of the show, but Castle Light's going to be featured on that Christmas Light Rivalry
how cool
show.
is that?
So
Well,
I'm going to have to get that information and send it to you as well. So.
Yes, absolutely. If we can vote or something that we can do to help push them to the top
that'd
would
be
be awesome. Put Martin County on the map again for a really, really cool thing,
Really great cause they do.
So Amy Pritchard, she said, "Hey, Mike, we'll catch it in replay." She has a meeting this morning, but thanks you for everything that you do for Martin County and beyond. And Amy, we appreciate you tuning in. She is one of our newest school board members that was elected here this past election.
That's right. Swearing in on Monday, I believe she swears
Monday,
in next
I think it is Monday, and I think the commission is Tuesday, so a lot of things happening next week.
Tuesday as well.
And by the way, Amy is probably one of my all-time favorite races to watch because of the way she ran her race. I don't normally say that about campaign races, but she had such class and just kept going forward. She tuned out all the noise that was going on around her.
She really
and
did.
Just campaigned on what she believed in, and it paid off.
It was so energizing to watch her because she did. She dug in her heels. She stood up for what she believed in. And she'd tell people square to their face in a very polite manner, "Hey, this is what I support, and if you don't support that, that's great. I respect you. You don't have to vote for me, but this is who I am. This is what I support." And that really resonated with people. It did. People knew that they were putting their voice to her because they believed it. They weren't getting,
I agree. I don't think we're
over
going to
like others do.
I don't think we're going to have any shocks from Amy. I think she is who she says she is, and she's going to follow through that way as she's a school board member. So we're excited to have her on the board and watch what she does. And I'm going to have her back in the studio at the beginning of the next year, too. So we can kind of keep in touch with her. It's very exciting times. But Mike, oh my gosh, there's just been so much that's happened in the county. So let's talk about here a lot of the topics of interest. The first one is the budgets. Oh my gosh, the $560 million for county government and constitutional offices.
That's a lot of pesos.
Yes.
I mean, it
is a lot of pesos.
Let's be honest, it's a lot of money. Although it's really interesting to see when you take a look at the home values and property values, how much they've skyrocketed over the last 12 to 18 months. Not only do we have the highest budget for county government that we've ever seen, but this is the first time in almost 15 years that we've seen a millage rate decrease. And if you're a homesteaded property owner almost exclusively, then you'll see a bottom line decrease in your tax bill this year.
That's good news.
That is good news. And we're being subsidized by the businesses and industrial properties and such in the county. And now, as a homesteaded property owner, I'm going to take everything that I can and say, I appreciate it. But I'm definitely not holding my breath that it's going to happen again next year.
Right.
Either.
It is the rarest of rare occasions where the government actually decreases your tax.
You don't see that often.
No.
So, unfortunately, we haven't really seen a decrease in spending either that'll help us to make this perpetual. But it really is. almost insane to think between the school board and the county. I mean, we have 170,000 people in the county, and we're over $1 billion in government expenditures. That's
It's incredible.
A lot of money.
It's incredible. And the school is almost half of that, right?
The school is, and I mean, the school definitely has to. There's a lot of money that goes back into the state as well. You know, the
Right.
school collects taxes based on the state mandated ad valorem level, or not ad valorem, excuse me, millage rate. Gets remitted back to the state, and the state sends it back depending on how many pupils you have in the school district. Nevertheless, there's still a lot of expenditures in the school budget itself, and you know, we see things like discussion. I guess it was about a month ago now. The school board had a discussion about affordable housing for
Right.
new hires for the first 2 years that you come into the county. And we look at how much money they're looking to expend on something like this, and really just estimates at this point. But the biggest thing that was concerning in that discussion was they openly admitted there's only one property they can utilize that's large enough to make something like that happen, and that's their district headquarters off of US 1.
Wow.
Which makes you wonder, it wasn't that long ago where they were hitting up residents for money in a
That's
huge
right.
referendum to purchase that
purchase.
property. So, and I mean, they're actively converting the manufacturing facility on the back half of the property for a new school district built, or a new auditorium type building for
Okay.
all their meetings.
Okay.
And then the property on East Ocean to be utilized for other purposes. But you know, where are you going to put affordable housing for your employees if that's the only one you own that's large enough to make it happen?
Mike, you've touched on one of the hottest topics in the county this year, and that is affordable housing. And people are screaming for the government. County, City of Stewart's dealing with it right now. You know,
They had a fun meeting on Monday.
oh goodness, did they ever? Last couple have been very interesting in the City of Stewart. You know, there's an argument there. Is it the government's job to provide affordable housing? And if so, you know, it's a really tough thing. I know in the City of Stewart, it's almost completely built out already. You know, that's one of the things that has come out through the ZIP, the zoning in progress
Not even
process they're going
before
through.
we even get into the idea of whether it's government's responsibility to provide it versus private entities' responsibility to provide it. You know, one of the biggest things we need to figure out as a community is whether or where we're going to build it. I think that's the biggest issue. You know, there's a lot of people that are very firm in their belief that we need to stop building out inside the urban service boundary because of the loss of green space. And I mean, as someone that's been here in Martin County since my youth, I'll tell you, it's noticeable how little
Right.
green space there is. So it's
Right.
a very valid complaint and a very valid concern on people's parts. Simultaneously, these are the same people who are usually the loudest voices saying, don't build outside the urban service boundary.
Infill.
Exactly. Well, not necessarily infill. It's
Well, I
just
mean,
saying don't
that
build
was the
outside.
argument before this.
Yes.
It was always when people were looking outside the urban service boundary, they're like, no, you need infill. We need infill. And
And
then infill
that's
happens,
it.
and now we don't want that either.
We come to
do you
realize
do?
that the practical application, exactly, the practical application is you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Right.
You know, it's not realistic to say, no, it's a closed sign on US 1 in Jensen Beach. You know, you can't put a closed sign up, say no one's moving.
Right,
It's
right.
just not a practical
And
thing
there's
to do.
property rights owners, for
Exactly.
the owners as well. They have their property
That's-
rights of what it can be or should be used for.
That's it. I mean, if you bought that land and you have a desire, even if you have to go through a zoning change and whatnot, and I understand that, but that's why we have future land use. And
Right.
even future land use, again, when we're talking about a plan that was developed in the 1980s, going back to 85, and then coming into today where we've had discussions every few years, we have a discussion about our comp plan, but no criticism to anybody, but I question whether it's been a real consequential
Right.
discussion, or are we just dotting our I's and crossing our T's? A lot of rubber stamping and just kind of go along to get along with our comp plan discussions. We really haven't had any hard questions asked of where we're going to see ourselves, because we continuously say we're not built out yet inside the urban service boundary. It's something Sarah Hurd says a lot, and she's 100% right. We're not completely built out, mathematically speaking. But we can't simultaneously say we're not built out, so we're not going to extend, and then say, no, we're not going to build out the areas that are left for development. We just don't want to see it happen.
Right, right.
You know, you just can't have your cake and eat it too.
Right. It's a really tough issue right now, especially with the affordable housing, because with there only being so much space available, it's supply and demand. 1,000 people are moving to Florida per day.
Exactly. I mean, people don't realize 1,000 people, you say 1,000, it's like, okay, we're in a state of 22 million people, so 1,000 doesn't seem like much. But to put that in perspective, today's, Tuesday? So
Right.
if we had 1,000 people move into the city of Okeechobee every day, the entire city of Okeechobee would literally double before Sunday service.
Oh, that's incredible.
So, I mean,
right.
to
That's a
put
good
into
way to put it.
perspective
Right.
what 1,000 people really is, it is when you look at the micro scale in your local environment. They're not all moving here to Martin County, but St. Lucie is one of the fastest growing census districts in the entire nation.
I was going to say, any of the coastline counties are the ones that are being impacted the most.
Oh.
You know, and south of here, it's truly built out.
I,
Martin County is something where people look for because we have a little slower pace of life, and that's what we want to protect, and that's what's bringing people here too.
I was down in Palm Beach yesterday at the Historical Society. I'm working on a project with the Martin County Black History Initiatives, doing some research right now about colored education in Martin County back in the 20s. And it took me down to Palm Beach, going through the minute books from 1919 to 1925. And we were just having an off-the-cuff discussion about the migration of folks coming from Miami-Dade into Broward, Palm Beach, and everything moving north. But we don't talk about the pinch coming from the north heading south.
Right.
I mean, traditional areas like South Brevard County and Indian River County, which are no man's land, just nothing but trees and roads to nowhere, roads to the Cape.
Right.
I mean, that's what nowadays.
At one time.
You want to talk about a lack of affordable housing or lack of housing in general. I mean, Brevard County and Indian River County, they cannot keep up with their demand.
Isn't that
They're
incredible?
having such incredible growth, and that's pinching further down into us.
It
So
truly is. Now, St. Lucie County, as you know, just expanded their urban service boundary a great deal. I think it's up to 60,000 acres. I think there's 2 sections of 30,000.
I'm trying to remember what
yeah.
I know they're
it's a
pushing
lot.
out. I just can't remember what the line was.
It's an
drawn
incredible
to.
amount. So, I mean, that'll probably help, but people don't. That was one of the discussions with the city of Stewart is we don't want to live in St. Lucie County. We want to live here. This is where we grew up. So,
fully understandable. I mean, I've been in front of the LPA many times arguing about some of the development up and down 714, and to my own consternation, because realistically it's something we're not going to stop. And the problem, we look at development here in Martin County versus other areas. So the nation, from the time we started our comp plan, national growth's been about 65% over that, close to 4 decades now. And here in the state, it's about 220% growth in those same 4 decades.
That's incredible.
Martin County's more than double the state average.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So, now, granted, the smaller your population is to begin with, obviously your percentages look a little more exacerbated. But nevertheless, it really illustrates that the pick and choose what we're going to give exemptions to for this community, or we're going to let this one be here for that reason.
That's right.
The chopped up nature of our comp plan, it's become so disorganized, and so every single one is just an exemption after exemption after exemption. So the system obviously has not worked to curtail the population growth that we thought it was going to, which really at this point, if I were to beg the commission for anything at this point, is to sit down and have a serious discussion about our comp plan and the urban service boundary. Because at this point, if you don't have a solid footing and a solid understanding of where you're at and what you're going to be doing or where you're at today, how are you going to plan what you're going to do tomorrow?
That's right.
We're just going to continue down this rabbit hole of making exemption here, making exemption there, and blink your eyes, and before you know it, like I said, you're double the state's rate of growth.
That's right. Piecemeal zoning has got to, at some point, be looked at and stopped. And have, like you said, you need to have that future plan, which, again, we're speaking with Mike Sturkis. As you can tell, Mike is very involved with all aspects of the county, and I appreciate that. Mike, as a citizen, it's rare to find somebody like you that really just is interested in what's going on with our local government. And it's something, talk about Martin. I have Eric Miller on. It's something we always discuss. Politics really locally affects you more than nationally by any means.
Absolutely.
You need to be involved locally, and you are. So
absolutely, I'm blessed and fortunate. I've volunteered both at the state level and the federal level on tobacco advocacy. I'm a big cigar guy myself. But I can tell you, working with people in Tallahassee, even working with colleagues and friends in Washington, D.C., that there's things that will affect me in some ways, but there's nothing that affects you like it does on the local level. I mean, it's in your face every single day.
It truly is. And, speaking of that, there's something that's coming up, and it was the pet ordinance here in Martin County. Talk about something local. This was a very local ordinance. 2 pet stores opened up, and, one thing led to another where some animal rescue rights activists and rescue groups said, we don't want pet stores here, and they started advocating to the county commission to close the pet stores. And lo and behold, without the pet stores having any idea this was going on, they voted to close them down at the end of this year.
This pet shop ordinance, it's unfortunate because from its get-go, it was just flawed to begin with.
Yes.
I mean, like you just said, this was something that came as a retroactive measure. It wasn't that we caught wind of, here's some folks that may be coming in the community or might want to start developing pet stores. Let's nib it in the bud now. That wasn't what happened.
They were given a license. They were given their permits.
Exactly.
They signed leases. And
they were open and doing business by the time some of these not-for-profits came forward and said, hey, we need to get rid of them. I mean, that's just absolute retaliatory action.
It truly is.
I mean, you could substitute pet shop for any other industry that someone might not like,
That's
whatever
right.
the case may be.
A small business is what we're looking at here as owners.
Exactly. Just the retaliatory nature of it. I mean, not even businesses. Let's say you're a not-for-profit and you're for XYZ XYZ not-for-profit that someone might not like, or
Right.
some advocacy group. Like I said, I'm a tobacco advocate.
Right.
So let's say you're the American Heart Association. You don't want to see an office for XYZ tobacco advocacy.
Right.
And you're going to turn around and say, nope, we're not going to do it. It's bad for the public health. It gives bad meaning, or whatever your excuse may be. The retroactive and retaliatory nature is just absolutely appalling.
It is. It's
Then
astounding.
you couple that with how quickly even the county staff admitted this is something that went through at lightning speed, and
Yes.
something that was passed on one vote instead of two.
Yes.
Almost every ordinance we think of in this county go up in front of the board on 2 occasions, not just one occasion. And then, I mean, just the part that blew my mind the most, I couldn't believe it. Some of the allegations that were made, and
False allegations.
false
I mean,
allegations.
they just threw them out there like.
By all means, the public, they can go up and free speech, public can say what they have to say. But the fact that county staff had already done an investigation into the existing shops and had nothing to complain about or had any concerns, yet they would sit back silently and allow for people to make some of these false allegations, even if you didn't open your mouth at that point and
Right.
try to interject. When one of 5 sitting commissioners use that as justification for their vote,
Right.
that's really a defining line in my opinion. If you have the evidence and someone's going to use that as a defining purpose, then you need to interject and say, listen, hold on a second. We weren't going to say anything because everybody's open to their free opinion, but we have nothing to substantiate their claims, so I would
right.
not use that as a voting principle.
There seemed to be very little vetting going on, and even the county's own animal care control oversight board member came up and made some accusations against these shops that were absolutely unfounded.
Yeah,
and this is who the county commissioners were relying on. They have this committee to bring them information. So, it really showed a problem in the process here in the county commission to me, that the whole system is truly flawed. And one of the things that bothered me is they're like, well, we did publicize it. We put it in the newspaper. Well, the newspaper is something you have to purchase. So if there's so many things in our government where like we got to make sure everybody has access to it. Well, if you don't have the subscription to the paper, you don't have access to it.
Well, and there are, if you get on the County Connect, the county's, I forget what it's called, their application, you go on Martin County's website and they have an application you can have on your phone. I like that. Every week I get an email saying, here's what's coming up, and I will tip my hat to the county. They've put a lot of effort in the last 12 months, 18 months to really try to step up with getting their information out there. And, I hope I'm not offending any of the listeners back home with saying this, but if we take a look at how many people show up to the polls, we do have a bit of an issue with apathy in our community, not just at the local level, but the state and federal as well. We've become pretty burnt out on politics, so a lot of people just kind of bury their head in the sand on some issues. But this is one of the reasons why it's so important that our elected officials, our commissioners, need to be stepping up to the plate and really thinking, maybe not with their hearts, but more with their heads on it as to what a practical application may be, or even if you do have an emotional attachment to something. I mean, my dog's a 16-year-old rescue from a kill shelter in Orlando. It was his 3rd time back. He was a big dog, and it was his 3rd time back, and he was on the list to go to All Dogs Go to Heaven shortly, and we call him Lucky because he's lucky to be here. So 16 years with the family.
I like that.
16 years with the family. We absolutely love and adore him. So I have nothing against rescues by any stretch of
I have
imagination.
one of each. I have a rescue and a purebred.
That's it. You just hit the nail on the head. There's people out there that have their reasons for wanting a purebred animal, or have whatever the case may be. They have their reasons for it, and it's a niche market. I mean, we're not talking about people that are selling 400, 500 animals in a 12-month period. It's very small numbers.
It's not at all.
So
Sorry about that. I had a message.
all
We're
right.
off air, but it looks like we're still on. So I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe it's the Alexa tune-in that came off. I don't know. Whoever texted me that, thank you. Try us on WSTU AM 1450. Of course, they probably can't hear me if they think I'm off air, but we'll give it a try.
A perfect example. The new and improved is not always improved.
That's right.
Old school radio works a lot better than the
That's
internet more
on
times
air.
than not.
That's right. Alexa, tune in. It's like they break in with their ads and then the internet. I lose the internet and Wi-Fi. So.
Oh, that's all right.
But
yeah, like I said, there's people that have their reasons for these animals, and we're not talking about hundreds of animals being sold in a short period of time. We're talking about a select number. So
it's
the
a very
idea
select
that
number.
the idea that we're flooding these not-for-profits, I mean, one by name. I'm not going to call their name, but if you're getting $1 million a year from the county to run animal services, and you're going to struggle to influx, let's say you sell one dog a week. I mean, that's what, 48 in a year.
Right.
If an extra 50 dogs in 1 year is going to overload your shelter, and you're getting $1 million from the county, I'm significantly more concerned about why we're giving you $1 million.
That's
at
right.
that point.
That's right. That's right. And it is our tax dollars that's going to
That's
certain
not a
shelters.
huge influx over a year's period. We need to take a look at operations
No,
if that's the case.
It isn't, and that's even one of the things that, one of the rescue groups came out and said they're getting 10 to 15 more calls a day since the shops opened up, and it was like, you've got to be kidding me. And they only had 10 dogs on their site available for adoption after 6 or 7 months.
Exactly.
There's just, it shows, to me, it was just the clink in the county's armor that we need to really watch our vetting process. Just because papers are given to the county doesn't mean they should automatically be put in a packet as fact, because that's how they're taken.
Most definitely. And it's really one of the downsides. We always talk about, especially when people that are involved with state level politics as well, we always talk about the fight between home rule versus state preemptions and whatnot. And I'm a huge fan of home rule and being able to be in constant contact or good contact with your local representatives. But there is a flip side to that coin as well, where mob rule can quickly take over.
Right.
There is a little bit of a boundary that's set up with some of your state level officials where they have the opportunity to look at things more logically and less from an emotional standpoint, because they're not getting bombarded at Publix trying to get a loaf of bread.
That's right.
So, I mean,
it's true. This was one issue that
difficult.
Came up. I'm like, this is why there is, preemption at the state level sometimes.
And Stacy hit the nail on the head with that. It really is. We have a lot of things that are preempted by the state.
That's right.
Almost exclusively. I can't think of a single one that's preempted by the state that wasn't started because of litigation between citizens, that
and
are
their
observing
local
their
government.
Constitutional rights, fighting a government that overstepped its bounds.
That's right. And with the puppy ordinance, folks, the commission has agreed to relook at the ordinance. We're not sure when that'll be brought to their commission meeting. We're thinking December. I don't know. So we're going to see what's happening there. The Animal Care and Control Oversight Board is meeting this Thursday at 3 p.m. in the commission chambers to discuss this. So
yes, ma'am. Tomorrow afternoon.
That's right. We're going to follow this and really watch what's happening here. And, Again, it's just an example of what can happen to any small business in this county, and that's why everybody should be concerned. This really isn't about puppies per se. It's about two businesses that did everything right, opened their businesses legally, and then afterwards somebody didn't like them, and here all of a sudden they're voted out by the end of December. And by the way, they provide 16 jobs to Martin County residents.
Again, 16 does not sound like a huge number, but when we're talking about a population of 170,000 in the county, where I think close to 50% of Martin County, 40% of Martin County is retired.
Anyways,
so I mean,
that's right.
You're looking at 80,000 people that are employed. 16 may not sound like a lot, but in the grand scheme of life, that's 16 mouths, 16 families.
It is, and in the grand scheme of the country, almost half of the country is employed by small busices such as these.
Yes.
So together, they're one of the largest employers we have.
It doesn't take long before those
the
numbers
government's
come
the
up.
largest employer, but but next is small businesses. So, Mike, so let's go on. We were talking about budgeting. We're flying through this hour, and we're not going to get nearly through all the information we wanted to, but you talked about, due to age and full capacity utilization, the county's infrastructure is vulnerable to degradation and major failures. So let's talk a little bit about the infrastructure, because there's a lot of infrastructure, sewer, septic, roads. I mean, infrastructure is everything like that.
Yep. And for those that aren't aware, that's actually a direct quote you read right out of the county budget. That's been a direct quote in the county budget for several years now.
Glad you pointed that
out. Part of the county's resiliency plan. In Martin County, like I said, we talked about growth earlier. Martin County's been rapidly growing. Our infrastructure hasn't kept up with that. And, I really will tip my hat to the county in one aspect, that when we do have infrastructure projects, the vast majority of them are paid for heavy-handedly from state and federal dollars. If you take a look at the Map Road, the Ripple project off Map Road in Palm City, more than 80% of the funds for that were not county dollars.
Okay.
More than 80% were state and federal grant dollars. And the county's really done a good job being able to layer different projects in one time. So when we have a CRA project like Ripple, where you're expanding the road out and you're going through these developments.
It's beautiful through there now.
It's a beautiful project,
did a great
without
job.
a doubt. The infrastructure, as far as wastewater, was looking to be done at the same time period. So instead of doing one and then having to tear out the road a second time to put in put a new road layer on top of the sewer hat, Instead of
Do it
doing
all
all
at
these
once.
things piecemeal, you do them all at once. Exactly, which is fantastic from a financial perspective, from a financial standpoint. And the first thing I think about is if our infrastructure is as aged as it is and running at capacity as it is, and we're able to layer these things through. I mean, getting 80% from the state and the feds is fantastic. But look at how many millions of dollars we have here locally. Like we said, 570
Yes.
million for government operations for 1 year alone. It really makes you wonder if we're at age and at capacity, do we need to build out a $10 million golf course? I
Right.
mean, is that really a necessity?
Prioritize.
Exactly, a priority. I love camping. I'm a big fan of taking the travel trailer out, and Phipps Campground getting ready to
Yes.
reopen. It looks beautiful.
Yes.
I'm excited, and I think that's something that makes a lot of profit. It's one of the highest profit businesses it's in the country is operating a campground. So I'm excited to
interesting.
see that one's probably going to be more profitable than the water park that we own.
Right.
But again, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of investments where we also sit back and have an aging and failing infrastructure that, I mean, it comes across as almost a veiled threat when you read the budget. It says right in there that we don't know where we're getting the money. We're aged out. We're at capacity, and we're not quite sure where we're going to get these funds from.
Well, you almost can see the writing on the wall, Mike, to be honest with you. They're going to wait till it's an emergency. It's
Yep.
going to affect all of us citizens. And we need to raise taxes. We need a 1 cent or 2 cent.
Exactly.
That's what's going to happen, and we're going to be forced to vote
Not even
for
the
it.
1 cent, 2 cent. I'll tell you what you need to watch out for is actually going to be your property taxes as a whole, because the state of Florida gives you up to 10 millage points for the county to assess, and we're just over half that. So there's a lot of wiggle room for the county to raise its millage rates. And over the long term, I mean, we're likely going to see this. And kind of tying back, we talked about development earlier, but kind of tying back into it, that's one of the reasons why we're seeing as much development in the springboarding here in the county is because we do have a need for these tax dollars that a lot of these developments are bringing in. I mean, at the end of the
Right.
day, people like Atlantic Fields, that's a lot of dollar signs that they're going to bring in tax revenue into the county, and quite frankly, the county needs every penny we can get.
That's one I was going to bring up, and that was one of the fireworks of the year, as you call it. It was
yeah.
the rural lifestyle amendment to the comp plan, and that had to do with Atlantic Fields, which is now being contested, by a local citizen. I think Donna Melzer, she ran for county commission. I think she was a commissioner at one time.
She was at one point, yes, ma'am.
So,
Not that long ago either.
No, time flies.
No kidding.
So that was actually a project down there off Bridge Road in Hope Sound,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
it was going to bring in just a ton of tax money for the county.
Ton of tax money. When you look at, I think, 316 homes, and I mean, granted, there's definitely infrastructure as far as buildings go, and then there's employee cottages.
But it was
and such.
70% open space.
70% open space. A lot of people don't realize that the 300 homes, look how heavily that one was contested and the amount of tax dollars they're bringing in. The county commission over the last month has approved more homes than that.
Isn't that
there's
something?
multiple developments that came up. I haven't yet had a chance to review yesterday's minutes, but 2 weeks ago, there's multiple developments came up. Even in the next, I think there's 3 meetings left for the year, 4 meetings left for the year. They're all coming pretty quick, week on week.
Right.
But there's multiple more developments that are coming up the next meeting on the 22nd. I mean, it's not 300 homes at a time, but when you have 2 or 3 at 60 homes at a time, they add up quick. So it really, to me, it raises the question of how much people are looking at it from, again, that heart versus their head.
Right.
Are they allowing the emotions to get in the way of the logical ideas of it? If we're putting all these big box mart home developments, and we need them. That's one of the reasons we have so few affordable houses in the county is because we have so
right.
few houses in the
That's
county.
right.
So if we're allowing these ones to pop up under the radar because we simply don't have much emotion attached to it, but you look at something like the rural lifestyle, which the amendment aspect was definitely the fireworks of the year,
Right.
not necessarily development itself.
Right.
But if we get so emotionally attached to these things and can't look at them logically, then the question becomes, why get involved at all? If we're not going to look at it logically and we're allow our heart to get in the way, then kudos to you. You got to have some type of moral and emotional attachment to something, but we can't be blinded by it either because we're just biting ourselves at that point.
It's truly interesting times. I don't have the exact figures here, folks, but they're close enough to give you the point. And that is when you talk about home values here and affordability, and you just mentioned the taxes can be raised through millages, which I'm sure most people are cringing because they went up so much because our values did for folks that were just buying homes or were not homesteaded. And the single-family home, the average price in Palm Beach County was around $530,000. In St. Lucie County, I think it was around, I'm going to say $300,000, $330,000. Martin County was $550,000.
Yep.
So our single family home, the average price is higher than Palm Beach County, and I think that would surprise a lot of people. And that's why it's just so expensive. No matter what we're putting in, it's a supply and demand thing. The demand is just there.
And a lot of people don't even look at the things that are connected to it, not just the price itself and how much it costs for the home, but look at the tertiary effects as well. Home insurance is such a big issue right now in the state, and especially in a coastal community like ours, there's most people are having a hard time finding any insurer, and they're going to the insurer from the state. Citizens Insurance is the last resort. Citizens has a cap of $779,000 to insure your property at.
Right.
So when you're talking about a coastal community like ours with a heavily, heavily inflated home value, there's people that can't even get Citizens Insurance because their house is considered appraised too high for Citizens to even take on the risk. So that's
your mortgage requires it. Yeah,
exactly. So
what
are you going to do when your mortgage says you need to have homeowners insurance? The state won't even give it to you on a subsidized or a mandatory basis. The state won't even give it to you. You're priced out of it. I mean, that has long-term repercussions to try to get people to move into the county for existing homes.
That's right. I mean, with the price of our property values that have went up even statewide, but have went up so much over the last 2 years, the state has got to address the fact that you can't put a cap on it. It doesn't, cover all the homes. I mean, it's...
The insurance market is such a sloppy market. I'm
It is.
not sure I'd even want to touch that with a 10-foot pole
I know,
right now.
especially after Ian and Nicole.
No kidding.
It's a crazy time right now. Another firework of the year that I haven't talked a lot about, but I'm very interested to hear your take on it, and that is the airport expansions.
Okay, so this is one, no pun intended, flew under the radar.
Right.
Towards the middle of summertime, it was actually a very benign situation as it became. On the ends of the main runway, there are arresting systems that allow for overruns for a plane landing that might overshoot the runway.
Okay.
It's a safety feature. It's legally required by the FAA. So they're coming up on the end of their usable lifespan. They need to be replaced. So there's several options, either to remove the existing arresting systems and replace them with just new, updated, but the same design patterns and whatnot. The other one is to remove on one side and expand the fence line out on the east side of the runway towards the undeveloped area of the Martin County Golf Course. And then the third one was simply to remove all of them and just build out the runway longer. So,
well, I bet that one had a lot of heat.
Yeah, the crazy part is what got the heat. The suggestion of moving the fence line out, I believe it was somewhere, it was a six-figure number, the amount of financial savings that were going to come with getting rid of the arresting system on the east side of the runway.
Okay.
But it would require moving the fence line out by, it wasn't a terribly huge number. I want to say it was something in the neighborhood like 50, 60 feet, maybe, even if it was a couple hundred feet. We're talking about 200 acres of land that was initially airport property that was turned into the golf course.
Okay.
So, expanding the fence line out, it does not, to the best of my understanding, does not actually change the aviation aspect of the airport. It's merely a barrier fence. It's a chain link fence.
Okay. By
expanding it out and further into the grassy area that's undeveloped, now you have that natural space that if there is an emergency and an airplane overshoots the runway, it has a place to come down and be withheld into the property. So, which I think a lot of people went into it thinking this is a no-brainer. We're going to save ourselves
Makes
six
sense.
figures, not have a problem. But the fireworks that ensued, and this is something that I kind of tip my hat to Ed Campy and Sarah and everybody but Doug. And this isn't to point out Doug, but this is to kind of show the different ideologies on the board. Doug was around when the airport was expanded 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. None of the other board members were. So they don't remember the heat that everybody took from the community over that airport expansion, a decade
Sarah would have
ago.
been there.
What's that?
Sarah
was. Yes,
yep.
Sarah was. That's right. So, which she would likely recall, and she was one of the voices that was saying we need to slow this train down. She's always been a very constant voice to slow the train down.
She is.
So
that's one thing with Sarah Hurd I really like is where she stands.
Exactly.
Ahead of a topic. You do. You always do. She's very predictable.
And so many votes, 4-1 or 1-4, and where Sarah stands on it, which is great because if you have everybody rubber stamping 5-0 every single time, somebody's not thinking.
That's right.
I love my wife to death. She's my best friend. I don't agree with her 100%.
That's
everything.
right.
She doesn't agree with me at 50% of things.
There's nothing wrong with an
And I don't
opposing
blame her
opinion.
either.
That's right. Yeah, really.
So, but yeah, so I mean, Doug, he remembers how much heat was
Tim,
taken.
if you're listening, Mike's wrong about that. I'm always right. It's my husband. Okay.
Go to Publix, buy flowers.
Right.
Every time. Then when you forget her birthday, she won't remember. Don't worry
There you
about
go.
it. So anyhow, so Doug remembers catching that heat, and a lot of people on the board, Ed and Stacy and Harold, on the other hand, they weren't around at that period.
Right.
So I can understand from their standpoint where they don't have that contextual background to it. So it was very interesting to see how heated Doug became about this issue. He kind of hinted to it back in April when it first started coming up to light that there might be something changing at the airport. And I mean, there are changes coming to the airport. Let's make no mistake. They do have long-term plans to build out for new hangar space. Haven't decided what that hangar space is going to be, but
It's been busier. I mean, the last 3-4 years, I've noticed an uptake of. It just seems like in the air anyway. I don't know the numbers exactly, but over my house, it feels like there's a lot more air traffic.
prior to everything going down in 7 and 8, Martin County was a very busy airport. Over 200 aircraft home ported, and it
Really?
was somewhere in the neighborhood of I think the average was like 40 to 50 flights a day.
Okay.
I mean, it was
Wow.
prior to the bubble popping,
Right.
and we're definitely coming back up to those numbers. To my understanding, it's definitely getting
Seems
busy
like it.
again. And this is another one of those things we talk about. People in the community, they're very concerned about the airport and very dismayed with the noise and whatnot. And this is another great example of how kind of the hodgepodge building
Right.
and the urban infill, how at some point you have to ask, is it the best idea? When Northrop Grumman took over the airport in the early 1950s, there was one stoplight in Martin County, and that was at 76 and US 1. I mean, it's a whole
Isn't that
different
something?
community back in the 1950s. We encroached on the airport. The airport didn't just start
Right.
expanding in size. It's actually shrunk from what it started as in the 1940s. We encroached on its space. Just like we talk about nature, how stay 100 yards from the bear, because if the bear gets you, it's your fault, not his.
Right.
If
Same
when we
thing.
go into nature, we're in their territory.
Right.
We encroached onto the airport. That area, psychologically should have been an industrial area, and it has the infrastructure with the rail line right there. I mean, intellectually, it would have been an industrial area, and it was initially.
At that
But
time, it was.
We've just continued to infill into that direction. So now we're seeing the advancements of technology. Some planes get louder. They're actually getting quieter from the old turboprops from the 90s and early
Yes.
2000s. Planes are getting quieter, which is nice. But at the same point, we also have better technology for window for noise dampening, windows, spray foam insulation and whatnot. But at the end of the day, all of that is just symptoms to the disease. And the disease is that we're encroaching on an industrial airspace, and now we're getting mad that we're dealing with industrial airspace.
Right.
I mean, it's just a logical fallacy that we can't continue in our county.
So where's that stand right now? I mean, you talked about some of the different ideas, and Doug Smith was kind of on one side of the coin. Was he on the side that you should move the fence or not move the
So
fence?
the vote was to leave the fence line as is. There was some concern if moving the fence line was going to be an issue with the FAA, because the FAA had to establish physical boundaries for the airport, which is really where the fireworks had ignited when the airport runways were expanded all them years ago, because it wasn't just a local thing. This is now federally involved as well. So,
Okay.
and as, of course, everybody knows you get the feds involved, your headaches just went
That's
went
right.
through the roof. So there's concern
Another
about
layer
that.
of
And
government.
the vote came through, if I recall correctly, I don't have my notes in front of me, but to replace the existing arresting systems with new and updated, but the same
Okay.
design features, the same thing. So from a practical application standpoint, no one should see any real change in difference, except for a 6-figure change or a 7-figure change in the county budget line. So we'll buy it, but outside of that, the actual application shouldn't be any different.
Okay. Well, it's kind of like, you talk about the county over the years has had lawsuits, and going back to the puppy ordinance, it's unfortunate, but it may end up having to go to court if the county doesn't really address this ordinance. And, it's like, it's our money, it's taxpayers' money, so it's
Exactly.
like the county staff, I don't think they understand. It's like, okay, we'll go to court. It's like, no, that's our money. We should
At
be
this
working this out.
And you and I, we've discussed this a lot over the
We
last
have.
5 months, 6 months now. I've obviously been against it for quite some time
Yes.
now. But
You spoke out in the June meeting before anybody else even realized this ordinance was out there.
It was crazy. And even my objections in June are they pale in comparison to what's come to play now that we have so much more information
Right.
and what's come to light.
Right.
It's an eye-opener how much was behind the scenes.
Right.
all that stuff aside, the emotions aside, again, from a logical standpoint, to me, the only way to rectify this issue is to scrap the ordinance as a whole, just get rid of it, and allow the ACCOB and the staff, allow everybody to come together and start from square one again and do things in the right way.
Right. That's
you
right.
know, even if you were to alter this, there's a lot of people saying grandfather, which initially that was something I was in support of. But the more we look at that, the more we see that comes with its own slew of
It
problems.
does.
You know, now we have favoritism concerns in the opposite direction. So, and at the end of the day, because of the emotions involved in it, no matter how you chop this up, no matter how you alter it, you're still going to have the same base ordinance, and you're still going to have the same raw emotions
Right.
attached to it. That, you know, by starting over from square one and doing this from an open and transparent and a logical basis, where we actually use the information that we have instead of using the accusations that were presented. By doing that, we can have something that's actually legally defensible in court if it does end up in that area.
And that makes sense, because really the goal of this ordinance was to stop puppy mills, which these
Yes.
aren't the breeders, these are just a pet store. And they had hundreds of people that signed a petition that said, we love our pets, we've bought
Yeah.
from them, and it just tons of support. So, you know, let's create an ordinance that actually addresses the real problem, and that is, and not all breeders are bad, but the ones that are, you betcha they should be put out of business.
And that's really the irony of it. It's said to be against puppy mills and the kitty factories and whatnot, but there's nothing about backyard breeders. There's
No.
nothing about where these animals are acquired from. This is 100% about retail sale of pets.
It is.
And I tell you, it's kind of funny because when you look at the county code itself, the actual Chapter 9, when you look at it and talk about retail sales, I'd be the first one to question, okay, well, define retail. Because
Right.
retail itself is any financial exchange for a good or a
Good or
service,
service.
you know? So
That's right.
not in a wholesale quantity. So, I mean, if I were a lawyer, the first thing I'd say is, okay, so is it December 31st we're going to shut down the Humane Society and every other person? Because
Right.
adoptions are, by definition, a financial retail sale.
That's right.
You know, you could put the name
Call it
adoption
an
on
adoption fee, but it's still exchanging money for a product.
For all intents and purposes, from a legal standpoint, you are exchanging finances for a
something.
product.
That's right.
So, I mean, unless we're shutting down all the rest of them, I mean, explain to me how you're going to legally defend that one in court.
Right, right. And the other thing they can do is, they're in the city of Stewart, is the county just has a county ordinance that covers the county, and let the city of Stewart deal with however they want to.
Yeah.
You know, that was the other issue they could do. We'll see what they do. But this is something to follow. And, you know, again, we're following this because this is a small business issue. It's not
Exactly.
necessarily a pet issue. Just think someday if, like you said, if they came after, you know, tobacco sellers or...
2 years ago they did, you know.
Right, right.
It happened. And,
That's right.
you know, Stacy brought it up, a preemption issue. Now, tobacco's been preempted actually since 1985 here in Florida. There's
Right.
been a preemption, and every tobacco legislation just renews the existing preemption. But nevertheless, I mean, it's Palm Beach 3 months ago in Palm Beach, the city of Palm Beach. I was working with their city manager because they were looking to alter their tobacco ordinances as well, and they were not recognizing a state level preemption for unfiltered cigars and non-tipped cigars. So it's something you just got to watch. These local governments will get you.
You really, really do. And I will say one other thing on this ordinance that surprised me was the National Humane Society got involved here
Yes.
locally. They put ads up on Facebook, and it was not the puppy store's puppies, but they were the puppies
Not
that
at
are
all.
just
Yep.
tortured and terrible, and your heart goes out. And claiming it was about these puppy stores. It was terrible. And I thought, even the National Humane Society have these two little puppy stores. You know?
Exactly. Unfortunately, it's not
incredible.
the first time a national
No.
organization's butted their nose in.
Yep, and they are. So we gotta watch our own here. Let's move on. Speaking of animals, the Fair Association, you said it's stalled out, moved to the new property off Citrus. That is something I know they've been trying to raise funds to be able to get the fairgrounds moved out there. They need more space.
Trying hard. Again, go out to Festival Lights. They can use every dollar.
That's right.
They're fundraising. They need it. You know, the fair has just outgrown their space. Like we've talked about, the encroachment around everything.
Folks, it's less than 12 acres for the whole
it's-
fairgrounds. It's incredible.
There's nothing there. There's no space there.
There
You
is
compare it
not.
to other fairs, it makes sense why it is that we're struggling to raise those funds, because it's hard to bring in the dollars like that.
That's
But
right.
yeah, there's an opportunity for land out on Citrus, but the fundraising's kind of stalled out on it, forcing the Fair Association to get multiple extensions of their lease. So even to the point where the school district, in partnership with IRSC, that's where they're going to be building out the new trade high school in Indiantown, is actually on land that was intended for the fair. A small
Right.
chunk's been broken off for that purpose.
Which
So
we're very excited about as well out there.
I
especially in
love
Indiantown.
the idea of having training schools coming back into the county. I mean, we train people for jobs that exist, not jobs that don't exist.
Right.
So
right.
It's a genius thing, especially when we have it's opposite to Clark Learning Center that focuses on that
Right.
classical education. You know, the new high school in Indiantown is going to have exactly. It has you'll still have all your classics like normal, but all of your electives are going to be geared towards the vocations, which I absolutely love it. Love the idea.
It's funny. That's something over the years where government, I think it started back in the early 2000s, no child left behind, and everybody had to go to college. And there was such a directive of that. We got away from the trades, and now we can't find mechanics and plumbers and electricians. It's tough to find the people, and they make better wages than most of the college graduates.
My wife has she had a dual bachelor's. She has plenty of education, but she had dual bachelor's in molecular and microbiology, and at the Honors College in the University of Central Florida, she was offered $9 an hour to scrub petri dishes coming out of school with 2 majors in molecular and microbiology.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it's absolutely insane. We force this idea that classical education is the end-all, be-all, and it's ironic because 100 years ago, so I'm doing this research project about colored education here in Martin County, but 100 years ago, this argument was being held between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, and we've come to see that Washington was on the correct side with training schools. And
right.
Here we are 100 years later having the same argument.
We don't seem to learn our lessons.
Not at all.
History repeats itself, as they say, so you need to learn from history.
We learn the things the hard way, and unfortunately, the things we did learn the right way the first time, we got to relearn all over again.
We seem like we forget them or write them out or what have you.
Shame.
So, speaking of that, there was 3 amendments on the ballot, and all 3 of them did not attain the 60% vote to pass. We only have a minute here. Mike, I got to have you back next year. To be honest with you, we're going to pick this conversation up. But honestly, we had so many more things we were going to talk about with the county, but I'll be certain to have Mike Circus back, and appreciate you again just getting involved with the community and being involved with all the local politics. And we touched on just a few issues. And folks, if there's other issues you want to talk about and want to hear from, give me a call and message me on Facebook. You can email Casey Ingram at pm.me, and we'll certainly be sure to pick them up. But in the meantime, Mike Circus, appreciate having you here in the studio.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
I absolutely enjoyed it, and there's so many different things that are happening out there. It's great to have a voice that we can listen to and hopefully keep people informed, which is what it's about.
Most definitely. We'll be back next year to try this again.
You got it. We'll see you in 2023, Mike, that's for sure. Folks, I'll see you next week beginning at 10:05 right here, same spot, WSTU AM 1450. Take care now.